boy, welcome to 6PI, your source for the esoteric, irrelevant, and lockdowns that affect our everyday lives. I'm your host, Mitch Miller, and boy oh boy, wowie zowie guys. Hey, it's like a WWE match in here. It's Rage in the Cage. As of April 1st, 2020, Saigon is in lockdown. Nobody in, nobody out. That's why it sounds like it's a wrestling match on WrestleMania right here. Nobody is allowed to leave the city. Nobody is allowed to come in, I'm guessing besides food trucks and the likes. So for a lot of foreigners looking to get out of the city now, well, you've missed the boat because this podcast has come out after April 1st. So unfortunately, there's nowhere for you to go. But hey, Saigon's a huge city. I'm sure you can rent out a fancy hotel or fancy whatnot in another part of town. Make it like a staycation. Why not? You can't go anywhere, so make the best of what you have right here. Folks, I must say, in light of recent events, we do have to look at the big picture here in terms of staying well, staying healthy, and also knowing that we're a part of history. This is by far not the most fun part of history in the whole life, but for most part, things seem peaceful. You don't hear about any wars going on right now. You don't hear about any bombings. People are just staying home and keeping to themselves. You don't see many people fighting over things besides the old people in Walmart fighting over the toilet paper and the young people also saying, oh, there is no virus, there's nothing here, everybody go outside. Really, you shouldn't be paying attention to any of those people, either ones I mentioned at all, period. But as history has proven, humans are great at adapting. We will get through this. This whole thing is no cause for concern. I'm in lockdown in my city. I can't go anywhere. But Saigon's huge, even though there's nothing open right now and absolutely nothing to do. But I'm sure if you wanted to go for a nice drive around Saigon and kind of think to yourself what a post-apocalyptic city would look like, well, here's your closest chance without actually being in it. I'm finding my time here at home pretty productive. I'm not really changing much of my personal agenda or schedule of what I usually do. I just find that I have more time to do what I want to do, which is starting to get a bit boring, I must say, but hey, I have all the time in the world to do it now. But I've been keeping myself occupied with video games, and also I've been subtitling some shows into Vietnamese. No, I do not know Vietnamese, but me and my roommate, Loun, our nice, wonderful sound editor and sound engineer, we are trying to Viet sub an American TV show and see if we can't grow an audience here for the show. It's one of my favorite shows, but we're going to wait and see how that project works out and if we can get the captions on the videos. But let's get to the main event, shall we? More WrestleMania language here. Over the past couple weeks, I have been sharing stories with you. Both of those stories were from last year. And I thought to myself, you know what? It's been a long time since I've written anything. It's been a long time since I've written a story. I'm sure it's been over a year now. And what I read you was starting to get a little dust on it anyway. So last night I sat down and wrote a little bit. And before I started to write, I started to think about what I wanted to write about. This is definitely a time where there's not much inspiration in the world. I could write something about the virus, but I'm not big on pandemics and writing about apocalypse and stuff like that. Then an idea came to me. I had never written a nonfiction story before, which is weird because I personally, for those that know me, love telling a lot of stories orally of things that did or did not happen in my life. So I was very, very hesitant to do this. I've never done it before, but I thought this story would be the guinea pig into a world of nonfiction. It's weird to hear myself as the narrator too. I tried to write it the way I would just speak it to somebody, and I want to see what you guys think of this. A little backstory on this before I read it. This involves me and my best friend Ryan chasing tornadoes when we were both living in Knoxville at the time. It was definitely my first experience with a storm, a major storm that is, outside of the house. Because usually when there's a major storm, you don't go out and chase it. But this one night, Ryan and I decided to tempt fate and tried to catch ourselves a tornado. This is called A Millennials' View on Tornadoes. Ryan and I had finished up at the raceway and finally set out to do the task that had brought us to unfamiliar sticks. It sounded easy enough. Go out, take a picture, look for a tornado. They were easy to spot. Saw them on the Weather Channel nearly every week. For one disaster marathon or another. You can spy them a mile away. What did I have to lose? It was getting late. We were driving along Emory, about to head down into Powell. The weather was still, and a light patter of rain hit the windshield, though not enough to turn on the wipers. The dark clouds had whisked away any last trace of sunlight before the sun had properly set. Every now and then the sky would light up with a long crack of light in the distance. To be fair, I was more worried about how many Myconites I could get in my mouth to notice what we were about to get into. Entering into Powell, the town for the most part was deserted. A few hanger-ons at the Kroger were walking rather than rushing briskly to their car, and we saw a stop sign semi-uprooted. Old Glory waved like Joan Rivers on the red carpet. I sighed. Guess we just missed it. Ryan craned his neck under the roof of the car to watch the traffic lights play double dutch. We drove along Emory for another couple of minutes before we took the off-ramp and head towards Halls. The rain had started to pick up now. Ryan flipped the switch and we watched as the rubber smeared the rain across the glass. Between the small talk and the radio chatter, I had almost lost track of the storm in front of me, but was kindly woken up with a huge crack. The sky lit up for a good 10 seconds before I realized why the sun hadn't just come back out. Our car was driving down a residential road that ran north of where we had gotten off the interstate, but believe you me, I wished I was on that interstate during all of this. The rain now splashed down in buckets like the waterfalls at Dollywood, and caused such a reverberation on the body that I had to plug my ears to stop them from ringing. Ryan, by some miracle, had managed to veer the car off to the edge of the road and not send us flying into a ditch. We were now in the thick of it. I sat still as a pillar while Ryan had tucked his head between his legs. We had the same thought, though. I'll let you take a guess at what that may have been. I counted my 20 years I accrued at that time, and had matter-of-factly accepted my fate. Though I prefer going out sitting up opposed to what position my friend had chosen. Would be a bit easier, I thought, to pull an L out of the rubble than an S. Now the car's windows were fully engulfed with water, and we heard the wind pick up. I couldn't have verified it at the time, but could have sworn I heard a train coming. The sound had slowly progressed again, but all of a sudden dissipated to a whine, then to a whistle, and then to nothing. The rain had slowed, now back to a moderate level. And for the first time in seconds, we began to breathe. We weren't dead. We weren't happy, but we weren't dead. We drove home that night not saying much else than the most common vocabulary one would associate with a sudden near-death experience. The world didn't know about it, nor have I really found a reason up until now to share it. And even that stems from boredom. I think we take for granted the times in life that show us an open door into the next life. Even if it's for a split second, we realize we have the opportunity to cross, but a non-voluntary one at that. Though this moment lasted for all of 45 seconds, I can reassure you that weather is not trivial. It's especially important when you're standing right in the thick of it. So yeah, a tornado. I got really close to a tornado, guys. Not so close that I could go up and touch it, but enough where just being that close in, I didn't want to go any further. Would I ever do storm chasing again? Possibly, maybe. Hopefully, with a different type of storm. I think I'm all tornadoed out for right now. I've been stuck in a couple places where it's been a couple drops of rain. And when I say a couple drops of rain, I mean a hurricane. I've been in an earthquake. But out of all those natural disasters, I must say the tornado was probably the scariest and the one that I was most closest to, if you don't count being on top of the earthquake itself. This is not something I usually have ever thought back on. I think of it as more of a fond memory rather than anything that's affected me greatly. It was kind of cool getting so close to death and then being able to live and tell the tale. And now I'm sharing it with you guys. Where 10 years ago, I didn't even know what a podcast was. But with the uncertainty that we face with the virus and pondering day in and day out when life will go back to normal, I have something to be glad for. I ain't next to a tornado. I can't see it coming and I can't hear it coming. A virus I can stay out of the way of. A tornado stops for nobody. Well, anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this third installment of Story Time. A nonfiction story this time. One thing that I have never written. I've never written a nonfiction story, like I said at the top of the hour. This was my first attempt. I wrote it the way that I would tell it to another person. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you haven't yet, go check out the other 2 stories I've posted over the past couple weeks. Those are fiction. Those are a little bit more surreal, a little bit more abstract. But I must say, I am happy with my work here, with what I've done with the nonfiction story that I have written. And next week might be another nonfiction story as well. Anyway, folks, that ends our program for today. If you haven't yet, go like us on Facebook, 6PI Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, any suggestions for the show, or anything you'd like to hear, please send us an email at podcast6pi@gmail.com. Until next time, guys, don't go out anywhere. Possibly listen to the other episodes I've put out. But most importantly, stay tuned.